From old legends like the Knights Templar treasure, to the Disney fantasies like Treasure Island, people have always been enamored with the idea of golden gems hidden in mysterious parts of the world. The sense of adventure was embraced by pop culture in today's modern times, such as the Indiana Jones movies in the 80s and also one of my personal favorites in the early 2000s, National Treasure. While these treasures are fictional, that's not to say that every treasure hunting story is a myth. Some of these stories may have inspired Forrest Fenn, who was an art collector from New Mexico, who had a bright idea in 2010. He buried an estimated $2 million worth of treasure and wrote up a poem to lead to its location. Just a couple of years ago in 2020, 10 years after it was hidden, a treasure hunter named Jack finally uncovered the location. He was rewarded for his efforts with what was promised in the poem. 4 people perished on the hunt for this treasure, all while knowing the risk, yet pressing forward, chasing the dream of fame and fortune. So, you see, not all legends are made up just to fool people into chasing a rabbit's tail. And this brings us to the actual main originators of the legends of buried treasure: pirates. From Barry Clifford finding of Black Sam Bellamy's flagship along with a stockpile of his treasure, to Clifford's finding in 2015 of Captain Kidd's treasure. The idea of finding a true pirate treasure has never been more alive than it is today. So today, we are going to look at another story of pirate treasure. And more specifically, today I'm going to bring you the story of Olivier Levasseur and how he left his legend of buried treasure behind for future generations to discover. I'm Bradley Hall, and you're listening to episode 10 of Beyond the Harbor. There isn't much documentation on Olivier Levasseur's early years in life. We know he was born between 1688 and 1697 to a wealthy family in Calais, which was a major ferry port city in northern France. During his educational years, he was regarded as an excellent student and graduated into the French naval fleet as an officer. He wouldn't spend much time in the actual navy per se. During the War of Spanish Succession, he received a letter of marque from King Louis XIV. This letter would authorize Levasseur to sail as a privateer for the crown, thus putting a temporary hold on his career in the Navy. During his time sailing as a privateer, he spent most of his time in the Caribbean. In one battle during the Spanish Succession, he received an injury to his left eye. It limited his vision and left a nasty scar that was noticeable to everyone who met him. His vision continued to deteriorate until it was completely lost. He then donned a black eye patch to cover his eye. This became an iconic symbol of pirates, especially in today's pop culture, and it all comes back to the story of Levasseur. The limited vision and affected depth perception he now had did not have an impact on his ability to lead his men. He continued capturing enemy ships right up until the end of the war in 1714. At this point, he was ordered to return back home to France and continue his duties in the Navy. But this is where his life came to a crossroads. You see, after he got just a taste of the pirate life, he could not seem to let it go. Maybe it was the freedom, or possibly the rush of adrenaline he got when he took over another ship. And so he didn't. He decided to pack up his talents and head to the Bahamas. He would keep all the spoils of war for him and his men to enjoy. His movements for the next couple of years were silent, though we do know that he was successful in his early years of pirating. His later allies would tell of the respect that his crew had for him and the exceptional way he commanded them. He was given the nickname of La Buse, that translates to the buzzard, in his early years as a pirate because of the speed and ruthlessness in the way that he attacked his enemies. He was also very widely known for the way that he would verbally attack his opponents, striking fear in them without firing a single shot. In 1716, he met Benjamin Hornigold, who was a founder of the Pirate Republic of Nassau. If you listen to my episode on Blackbeard and Black Sam, you should be very familiar with Hornigold. His story is also a very complexing one, but he made a lasting impact on Levasseur. The two captains combined forces, Levasseur with his mostly French fleet, and Hornigold with his fleet known as the Flying Gang. The Flying Gang was already becoming very famous in the Caribbean. Among his crew was a young Black Sam Bellamy, along with Edward Blackbeard Teach at his second in command. Needless to say, the Flying Gang was a force to be reckoned with, and everyone knew it. The alliance between the two men would split almost as quickly as it was made. Hornigold was an Englishman and refused to attack English vessels. Levasseur, on the other hand, had no restrictions and would attack and harvest the bounty of any ship, regardless of what flag they flew. This difference the two captains had would eventually cause them to go their separate ways in the winter of 1716. But Buse didn't leave the Flying Gang empty-handed. No. He had sort of a prominent member tag along with him that you may have heard of. Samuel Bellamy. Bellamy and Levasseur sailed together for a little while, but then Levasseur had a change in plans and wanted to raid the coast of South America. Bellamy did not want to leave the Caribbean, so he decided to stay behind. This ended the two's reign on the seas, at least as a team. If you've listened to episode 4, you've heard the rest of Bellamy's story, who is regarded as the most wealthy pirate in history. Buse was sailing a 22-gun merchant ship that he named the La Louise on the way to the South American coast. He attacked several ships en route, most notably a slave ship coming from Angola. He left the crew on board to sink with the ship, but kept the slaves for himself for a short while before abandoning them on a small island just outside of Rio de Janeiro. After a small skirmish with the Portuguese killing 10 of Buse's men, the La Louise took shelter in Canania to allow the smoke to blow over. It was there where Levasseur was informed of a wealthy Frenchman nearby in the Bay of Parangua. He quickly put a plan together, but with lack of meteorologists in 1718, the crew was engulfed in a severe storm. The La Louise sank with 80 of Levasseur's men on March 9, 1718, just off the coast of the Contigo Islands. Levasseur survived the storm, narrowly escaping on a small brigantine ship that sailed in his fleet. After hiding out for some time to let the seas calm, so to say, Levasseur and his crew sailed north to begin preying on easy targets again. He reappeared in the Caribbean on June 17, 1718, roughly 3 months after his run-in that left 80 of his men dead. He was spotted in a smaller vessel that he had managed to steal on his way back from Brazil, though he was almost captured for a second time. This time by the HMS Scarborough, under the command of Captain Hume, who was tailing the 60-man crew led by Levasseur. The Scarborough was a 32-gun Royal Navy vessel that hailed from England and sailed with a crew that had a thirst for pirate blood. Surprisingly, though, he managed to escape and make his way back to the Caribbean with most of his looted fortune in hand. In late 1718, Levasseur was elected captain in place of William Moody after his disgruntled crew tossed him aside. Now operating with a full crew, he teamed up with Howell Davis and Thomas Coughlin. Over the next couple of years, these 3 pirate captains would concoct a truly sinister plan. The goal? Raid the port city of Whydah, take all the gold and gems they could find, and kill anyone that would dare get in their way. The fortress was known as, and forgive me for the pronunciation, Fort of São João Baptista de Ayuda. It was located off of what is now modern-day Benin in West Africa. The pirates then proceeded with the plan they laid on the slave port city. They pillaged and took every last piece of treasure they could get their hands on. After it was all over, they completely destroyed the fortress, reducing it to ash and ruins. You can't help but to feel a deep loss to the poor souls that were driven only deeper into poverty, thanks to the band of pirates. While this was a deeply profitable raid for Levasseur and company, their biggest haul was still yet to come. With the newfound fortune the pirates seized in Wada, the pirates set up shop off the coast of Madagascar. They again began building a new plan for their next haul. They decided to remake Henry Every's infamous capture of a Mughal treasure convoy who was en route to Mecca. Henry Every's story deserves an entire episode dedicated to his life story as well. Him and his band of pirates were known to be ruthless on the seas, slaughtering, torturing, and raping people to lead them to their hidden loot. Though later on in life, it was said that he expressed deep remorse over acts that had taken place under his command. Quote, "Inhumane treatment and merciless tortures inflicted on poor Indians and their women still affected his soul." End quote. While Buse was no saint by any stretch of the imagination, he was inspired by Every and wanted to get his piece of the loot for himself and crew. This brings us to April of 1721. Buse and John Taylor spotted a Portuguese great galleon ship called the Nossa Senhora de la Cabo, which translates as the Virgin of the Cape. It had anchored off the Reunion Island to undergo some repairs for storm damage. Unfortunately, as if it might have made a difference, to avoid capsizing on the sandbar, the crew of the vessels dismounted and threw their 72 cannons overboard. They sailed right up to the treasure-laden vessel and discovered the riches that waited for them. The treasure had been accumulated almost over 10 years and belonged to several prominent figures of the time who were making the voyage at the worst time possible. The valuables in the hold were valued at over 4 billion euros, or 4.5 billion US dollars in today's currency. Among all the gold, silver, and diamonds you would expect was also the fiery cross of Goa that was made of pure gold and inlaid with diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. The weight of the cross required 3 men to drag it to Levasseur's ship. This was truly a remarkable win for the pirates, and they knew it. In contrast to his predecessor, Henry Every, it was reported that Buse didn't lay a single finger on any of the passengers aboard the vessel. He seized the entire payload from them, but did not rob them individually or kill any of them. I suppose it's hard to find a silver lining here, but hey, I did my best. The treasure wasn't all that Levasseur took from the crew and passengers of the Nossa Senhora. He also took their ship and left them with a smaller boat. He renamed the ship La Victoire, which is French for the victorious. Very clever. The capture turned out to be one of the greatest single pirate hauls in all of history, literally writing the story of the legend of Olivier Levasseur while he was still alive. After amassing this substantial wealth, the pirates then began dividing the loot equally, with each member receiving 50,000 in gold and 42 diamonds. Levasseur took sole possession of the incredible solid gold cross, as the entire plan was in fact his idea. With his newfound wealth, it was time for Levasseur to lay low and enjoy the spoils of his riches. And that's what he did for the next couple of years. Levasseur would soon find out that becoming a legend, echoed in the halls of history, would also come with a bit of a downside. It would appear that escaping justice wasn't in the hand he was dealt. Up until this point in Levasseur's life, he had a widely successful career as a pirate. But there's one final story I want to tell you about his life, one that is still talked about and discussed to this day. Hang around a minute, and we will discover what sealed Olivier Levasseur's legacy in the history books forever. After the split of the massive treasure trove Levasseur claimed, for the next couple of years he would lay low and was supposed to have toned down his piracy. In 1724, the King of France, Louis XV, would extend an offer of amnesty to all pirates operating in the Indian Ocean. Hearing of this news, Levasseur sent a negotiator to the governor of the island of Bourbon, which is present-day Reunion Island, to barter on his behalf. On the surface, it seemed like Levasseur was retiring from piracy and turning away from that chapter in his life. But there was a small precondition in order to receive the royal pardon. He would have to turn over his treasure to the French government. He agreed to quit his piracy operation. However, he was not about to give up his fortune. After turning down the pardon, Levasseur decided it best to go into hiding to avoid punishment for the multitude of crimes that he had committed. He moved in secret to the island chain in the Indian Ocean known as the Republic of Seychelles. This island chain was located at the eastern edge of the Somali Sea and appeared to be the perfect spot for him to lay down his roots. His time on the Seychelles Islands was short-lived though, and he decided to move to Madagascar. He got a job working as a pilot for ships in the Antigua Bay, located in the northeastern side of Madagascar. It seems as though he had turned his life around, and just when he thought he had gotten away with his old acts of piracy, it all came crashing down. In 1729, 7 years after the capture of the Nossa Senhora, Buse was recognized by someone in port at Fort Dauphin in Madagascar. You see, becoming widely famous has its disadvantages as well, and the story of Levasseur was no exception. Maybe it was the notorious black eye patch that gave him away, or the manner in which he carried himself in the business he was in. Either way, they knew they had the legendary man himself. He was taken in shackles back to St. Denis, located on the island of modern-day Reunion in the southern Indian Ocean, which was the place at which he plundered the Portuguese ship all those years before. The trial was a quick one, as you might expect, and the verdict? Guilty. The sentencing was even faster. Death by hanging. His execution was scheduled for July 7th of 1730 at 5 p.m. so that everyone could witness it. On his way to the gallows, Levasseur wore a necklace tucked under his shirt collar. It wasn't because he felt the need to accessorize, though. It was reported that Levasseur told the executioner something strange during the walk over. Quote, "With what I have hidden not far from here, I could buy the entire island." End quote. Perhaps this was a bribe, or maybe a bluff. But more than likely, it was in fact true based on what we knew about his massive treasure haul. As he stood on the scaffold and looked out at the massive crowd that had gathered to witness this historic day, I'm sure he was feeling a rush of emotions all at once. He had indeed committed the crimes that he was sentenced for, and to some he did in fact deserve death, but others were not so sure as he had given up on his old ways. But Levasseur had one more trick up his sleeve. Well, tucked in his shirt. With the noose draped around his neck, the executioner asked if he had any final words. And with this, in one quick motion, he ripped the necklace from his body and threw it into the crowd of onlookers and exclaimed, "Find my treasure, the one who may understand it." With this, the gallows opened, and the life of Olivier Levasseur came to an end. But this was only the beginning of the legend of the hidden treasure. You see, inside the necklace, Levasseur had hidden a small note that contained a 17-line cryptic message. The cryptogram had 17 lines of random symbols that no one seemed to immediately recognize. Though the necklace has been lost through the years, the cryptogram and copies have survived to this day. So, has the cryptic message ever been decoded and the location of the treasure been revealed? As of today, it hasn't. But there have been many efforts made over the years to locate the missing loot. But just because it hasn't been found doesn't necessarily make the treasure a myth. We do know that Levasseur had a massive amount of treasure in the early 20s, so I suppose he could have sold some of it off over the next 7 years. But that theory is highly improbable, seeing that he was trying to fly under everyone's radar and not raise any flags by selling bulk gold and gems, not to mention a solid gold cross covered in gems. That would most likely make people suspicious and blow his cover. In 1947, an Englishman by the name of Reginald Cruise Wilkins set out to decrypt the message and discover the treasure. He deduced that part of the message stated, quote, "The treasure was somewhere underground and must be approached carefully to avoid being flooded. It is protected by tides and requires damming to hold the waves back. Also, it is to be approached from the north." End quote. Apart from some old guns, coins, and a pirate sarcophagi, no treasure ever came from his efforts. He died in 1977 before he could break the last piece of the code. To this day, his son John is still actively seeking the treasure. He concluded that instead of using advanced technology to locate the treasure, he needed to go back to the old method and get inside Levasseur's mind. He said he only has 2 more lines to complete before he finishes decoding the message. Could he really be that close to Levasseur's hidden fortune? Or is it all a myth, made up in the final moments of the legendary pirate's life? The legend that has become of Olivier Levasseur and his hidden treasure has grown with global reach over the years. He was a well-known pirate of his time, sure, but with the claim of buried fortune came longevity. So, is his treasure really out there, just waiting to be found? With as many believe it is, there is double the amount of skeptics. I happen to believe that it's out there, waiting to be found. We all know he was a successful pirate. We know that he amassed a ton of treasure over the years. And we know his life was cut short due to the crimes he committed. So, what are your thoughts? Go pick up a copy of the cryptogram and prove to the world that the legend of Olivier Levasseur and his buried fortune is not just folklore. Or perhaps maybe it is. But that's the beauty and the fascination that drives us to continually try to find the answers to what we have yet to lay our hands on. This episode was written and produced by me, Bradley Hall. If you enjoyed this story as we explored the fascinating history of Olivier Levasseur and his hidden treasures, please be sure to like, rate, and subscribe. You can find us on Instagram by searching for Beyond the Harbor. Questions, comments, and feedback can be left at my website. As always, if you are looking to take a deeper dive into this story, the source material as well as full transcripts used for this episode can be found on my website. Thanks for listening.